All right, well, welcome. I'm Lanny Parr with the Neighborhood and Public Involvement Program, and our program coordinates the city's boards and commissions. We also help with the following. We coordinate the recruitment for our new board members. We host the annual trainings for volunteers such as this, the new board member orientation. And we also serve as a resource for boards and staff liaisons. And we also oversee bylaws and ordinance changes. Our goal tonight is to provide a training that's going to give you a broad overview of topics that will help you make your transition into serving on your board as smooth as possible. So we want this to be a real practical takeaway for you. And we've got a great lineup tonight. We're going to hear from Mayor Lacey Beatty, who was once in your shoes volunteering on a city board. And our city manager, Jenny Hariyama, will provide a helpful overview about what you need to know about our new form of government, the role of city council, city manager and staff, as well as council goals and priorities, and a budget update. And Grace Wong, our assistant city attorney, will cover basic legal and ethical considerations of what you need to be aware of as you do your volunteer work. And then we're going to hear a Beaverton 101 presentation from Francisca Elliott, our city's public involvement coordinator. So with that, we're going to start off with a warm welcome from our Mayor Lacey Beatty. But before I hand the mic over to her, let me share a few fun facts about her. She was elected Beaverton's mayor in 2020 and took office in January 2021. And then prior to serving as mayor, she served for 6 years on Beaverton City Council. And before joining the City Council, she was a volunteer for the city's Visioning Advisory Committee. And she served as the vice chair. She is engaged in the community and has served on various boards such as Home Plate Youth Services and the Community Action. She is the youngest ever elected official and the first woman mayor in Beaverton's history. So welcome, Mayor Beatty.
When I left the Army in 2005, my husband and I decided to make Beaverton our home. What no one tells you about leaving the Army is how lonely it is. And so I found myself here with no friends, no family, coming away from a community where every day you had a purpose and you were driven and you were surrounded by people doing the same thing. And my husband went into an Army job here, so he was immediately surrounded by community. And I was talking to a mentor during this transition time of my life, and she said, just because you're done serving doesn't mean you need to be done serving. So get out there and find a way to serve again. And so I went out to the mailbox and I pulled out this card and it said, join a Beaverton commission. And I thought, all right, big guy, is this the clue? And I was reading the back and there was a lot of them on there, like budget committee, and I was like, meh. Sorry to all our budget committee members. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Library, like cool, I didn't have kids at the time, and then I saw one, it was Vision Advisory Committee, and I was like, I'm a visionary, this is for me. So I applied, I went through 2 interviews, and the mayor didn't select me. But I didn't give up, and I applied again a year later. I just recycled the same application, and Lanny Parr called me and said, we've selected you. I'm telling you that story because we have hundreds of people that apply for these roles, and we have to be kind of selective. So you're the cream of the crop, so congratulations. You're one step better than the mayor of Beaverton. You were picked the first time. What I want you to know about serving in the city of Beaverton is, like, watch out, you might become the mayor one day. And it's a central part of local government and how we function is to have volunteers coming in and doing good work. And what's exciting for this group of people is that the city council recently, 3 years ago, went through a form of government change. We went from a strong mayor, so the elected mayor was in charge of everything from personnel on, to having a city manager. So you're going to hear from Jenny later. So I get to do a lot of government relations. I get to go to Salem, I get to go to DC, I get to go to the White House. And so our roles are fundamentally different. And so the city council also, everyone has served less than 3 years besides me. So as we've kind of learned and developed into this form of government together, one of the things that we decided to do was make sure that our boards and commissions really reflected this style of government. And so if you don't know much about what elected officials do like me, we direct the city manager to implement our goals. And we get together once a year and we set our goals, and that's supposed to be the guiding principles for the city. And so the person that the council is able to hold accountable of whether we're successful or not is the city manager. So we collectively decided that this year in transition that the city manager would start implementing with the boards and commissions tasks that they wanted them to work on. Because the feedback we were getting was like, cool, we're doing all this work, but like, what does it mean? You're not, they go out and find their work, and then what might happen at the end of that is it might be a little conflict from what the city council goals are. So the best way to keep your guys is, and I'm a big fan of like, if we're gonna ask volunteers to do things, like it needs to be meaningful, right? Like I never have had interns where they're like stapling papers or getting coffee. Like people want to do meaningful work. If you're gonna leave your kids, if you're gonna leave your spouse and you're gonna give up a Tuesday night to come sit in a city council chamber, let's make sure that is meaningful work. So what we're gonna be able to do with that is you guys are gonna be, we'll say the freshmen and not the guinea pigs, that sounds better. The freshman class on coming into this new style of government. So you're gonna join a board with people that have been here for a long time, that have been doing things another way, and so I am dubbing you guys the champion of how we're gonna get things done in the future. And it's really gonna create more of a process that is beneficial, that you're gonna be able to do things that are meaningful, and we're gonna get rad stuff done for the city of Beaverton, because that's really, when I interviewed every single one of you, besides the dude with a beard, I don't know how he got in here, everyone else, I picked you because you had an awesome story to tell, and you were exactly what our board needed at that time. And so just remember that, like you were picked because you have these awesome backgrounds, you're bringing meaningful things to the city, and I want your time volunteering to be really great. And if I can be helpful in your journey, I'm easy to find. You can plug in for 15-minute phone calls. I'm easy. If you go to the Beaverton website, you can pick a 15-minute time slot. I'll meet with anyone. Better yet, if you want to have coffee, we can do that too. So I just want you to know that you're valued. Thank you for volunteering at the city of Beaverton, and I hope that's what you wanted me to do.
Great.
All right, cool.
But hey, you're not off the hook yet.
Okay. I was going to say my 10-month-old has had 104-degree fever all day, so I think I left her at home with her other parent. I'm not going to lie, I was a little excited to get out of the house for a little bit, but so I didn't have time to look at the notes.
No, we really we're appreciative that you made it tonight.
You just missed my amazing speech, but thanks. That's all right.
Since you were once in their shoes, what advice do you have as they embark on their first year as a new board member?
I think it's going to be fun. You're going to build relationships, and I will tell you, the people that I served on the Vision Advisory Committee with, I still hang out with probably 80% of them, because once you're old, how do you make friends? And no one tells you that, as a grown-up, when you don't have college or these other things, is how to make friends. So this is a great opportunity to make new friends. I also think be open for opportunity. So we have a lot of opportunities that come to board and commissions, whether it's speaking on panels or whether it's helping serve on another committee or bringing your expertise to something else. So be open for opportunities. And just like any other group or anything you do, you get into it you get out of it what you put into it. So if you're a person that is engaged in doing things, you're going to get that back. If you're a person that just comes to a meeting and sit there, it's probably not a very meaningful experience. So I would also say you earned the right to be on the board. Make sure that you use your voice. There's no you need to wait your turn. This is your turn. Don't blow it. No pressure. You might end up being the mayor of Beaverton.
Great advice.
That's the only question I had? Dang, that was easy. All right.
I remember when you were your first year as a board member, you had lots of ideas.
I still do. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to get them implemented, board and commission members. Lanny had to manage me a lot. So also, last thing on the what you should do. Lanny is your gateway to you'll have a city staffer that's there for your board. Them and Lanny are your gateway to everything. And if you find yourself in a situation where you're should I or could I do this? Ask a staff person first.
That's good advice. I'm going to add Francisca to that list too.
Yeah.
We're the team. We're going to always be looking out for you. So thank you, Mayor. Great advice. We appreciate you. And so now we're going to hear from our city manager. Jenny is Beaverton's first city manager responsible for implementing a voter-approved charter change, transitioning from city strong form of mayor government to the council manager form of government, and she has been busy, to say it very lightly. And we've been very appreciative to have her skills and talents over these past few years to help us navigate through the significant governance change. And then prior to working at Beaverton, she was the city manager of the city of Tracy, California, and city of Scotts Valley, California. And in addition to all that prior experience, she has spent the last 25 years working at all levels of local government. And Jenny lives in Beaverton with her husband in a full house of fun, 5 children, 2 dogs, and 3 cats. And that just always makes me smile. So you go from one full busy house here to home to a full house.
Well, in full disclosure, so I have 3 out and 2 at the house now. So
okay,
yeah,
so it's a little
still
outdated.
well, if you include my husband, that's 3. So yeah, kind of like the military, but not that. I grew up actually the daughter of a fire chief who went on to be an elected official. So kind of born into it, and also have relatives that are also in public service. So I think my heart and soul is in it. And so I want to kind of walk through with you some of the changes that have been happening, and you'll probably have some questions, so I'll try to answer them. But there's 4 things I want to talk about. I want to talk about the new form of government and clarify kind of roles and responsibilities of the council. Sometimes that kind of confuses folks. The council sets goals and priorities. What does that mean to you, and why should you care as commissioners? And then the other is fiscal sustainability and budget development. And I'm going to go into a little bit of detail about that, because I think there's things on the horizon that you need to know about. And like the mayor said, you get to be ambassadors to your other friends, neighbors, relatives, and really clarifying and helping connect the dots. I always think it's better for you to be able to help kind of correct and get your neighbor to understand what's happening in the city, rather than someone maybe like a staffer like me doing that. I think there's more credibility. So you do carry a lot of weight in this role, and we're really excited to see how it all works out. So, all right, let's go to the next item. That's me. We heard about me. Okay, new form of government. So this chart may or may not look familiar to you. So before, in the strong mayor, the mayor was basically the CEO of the city and had a number of responsibilities. Budget oversaw the day-to-day responsibilities. A council manager form of government really just spreads that level of responsibility out to the full council, and they hire a professional city manager to run the day-to-day operations and provide them a recommended budget, which they approve. The mayor has actually a number of special responsibilities that distinguishes her from the rest of the council, and ranging from legislation to emergency management, and has a little bit more of a pronounced role and influence in the community. So that's kind of the distinguishing, and she's full-time, and so, but no other councilor is. And in this form of government, the council and the mayor only hire and fire 3 people. That'd be me, the attorney, and the municipal judge. Everyone else pretty much is either under me, aside from the attorney and the judge, because the judge doesn't really supervise others other than smaller judges. But all of the administration for the courts and all that's handled through a court administrator, which reports to me. So most of the day-to-day operations are in my domain, except for the legal. And so that's kind of the big change in the government. And so when I say operations, just think day-to-day things like your roads, your streets getting taken care of, library, police, planning, economic development, things of that nature. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about operations. The ice storm would be a really good example, making sure that everybody is out there, getting the roads taken care of, removing trees. All of that operation would be over my oversight. And then I would be coordinating and giving information to the council and the mayor as needed. And then if there's a bigger emergency, the mayor would be out there communicating with the public as to what's happening. And so that's why she's kind of the figurehead of the council and serves in that kind of political role. And so where do you fall into all of this? So the mayor makes recommendations to the council of who should sit on boards and commissions. And then from that item goes to the council, and the council ratifies those recommendations. And that's how you all are here today. And so we have about 14, 15 boards and commissions, quite a lot of you. And what your role is you're an advisory capacity only. And so you're a policy advisory board member, and you give the council advice on things. But you do that not directly to the council, you do that through staff. And staff will help kind of corral a work plan for you and help give direction on what are the type of things that council seeks input on. For some boards, it's very technical. Think planning commission, transportation, there's very specific technical things that will come before you. And others, it may be more programmatic in nature. And so anyway, you really rely on your staff, folks like Lanny and your staff liaison, to give you some of that direction. And you have chairs of your boards that will also help guide that work as well. So we're going through a process where we're assessing all of the boards and commissions. We want to make sure that we understand the work you do, and really to set up you for success so that you're really clear on your work plans and how you can help support the council. There's so many of you that we want to make sure that we've got everybody on the right bus doing the right things, and so we're also trying to make sure that we're efficient in the work that we do as well. And that's going to tie into some of my budget message that's going to be a little bit later in my presentation. But I want to talk to you about like really what the council does and what that looks like in practice. So I like to kind of show this diagram, and I talk about the what. So the council is the what, and so when we say council does policy, they make the decisions around, well, I want that. So what is an example of that? I would like a gateway arch as I'm entering into Beaverton, right? So that's the what. And I say, okay, my job as a city manager is the how. I'm going to tell you how you can make that happen, how you need to build it, where it needs to go, how much it needs to cost, who needs to be involved, how we're going to talk to them, and how I'm going to pay for it in perpetuity, right? So that's the how, and that's a big bucket of things. And basically what happens is then I have employees, and they're the ones that are the who, and they make that all happen, right? They do all that stuff. They're the boots on the ground. But where those circles intersect, that's where that middle ground is, where we all have to figure out how we work together and what our roles are. And so council can't direct staff, only I can direct staff. The only person council can direct is me. And so we have to make sure that we kind of have those lines and those roles kind of figured out. That's why for you as commissioners, you don't direct staff, but staff is there to support you. And you are responsible for getting your voices heard through the staff to the council on whatever items are before you as a board member. And so that's kind of how the work is done, and you help inform the what, if that makes sense. And depending on what commission you are, will depend on what kind of project is coming before the council. And so a lot of that is really kind of dialed in. The other item I wanted to talk to you about is like, okay, you know, how does council decide like what the whats are, right? So what they do is they meet annually, and they have an annual goal setting workshop. And usually they set goals for about maybe the first 2 years, because it usually takes a good 18 months to 24 months to see something to fruition. A lot of our projects actually just don't happen overnight. So we have 8 strategic goals. They're up there at the top, and I don't know if you have the handouts here. And do they get the handouts? Do they have these? Okay, wonderful. And so these goals are kind of like my marching orders and guidance on how I shape the budget and the information that I present to them, the type of projects I recommend for their work plan. But really, the driver for them on every 2 years is those 4 kind of priority areas. And every year, they look at those and they go, does that still make sense? Are these the areas that we want to focus on? And there's typically key projects under each of those buckets, if you will, that they design and help kind of advise around programs and projects for me to do. And I bring this all together to them in what's called a council work plan. If you pay attention to the council meetings in February, they'll receive that work plan and we'll talk about it and whether that makes sense. And once they kind of give the blessing on that, then I'm really building a budget around all of this. And so when you wonder, well, what's the council spending money on? Anything that relates to this, that's what they're spending money on, and that's what they're focusing their time on. We're going to be launching a community survey. It's a statistically valid survey to really kind of bench, is this really what you want, so that the council can be informed when they decide to establish their goals in subsequent years. So that's going to be really important. Not only is it going to be a tool to check on how well we're doing from a program standpoint and a service standpoint, but also making sure that their pulse check with you is actually matching what the community wants. And I'm going to bet that we're going to learn a few new things. So I'm really looking forward to that. and whether you guys get a phone call to participate in it. The other piece I wanted to just outline to you, and it's in these little kind of purple boxes, is these are the reasons kind of why we have the goals. It's kind of in fine print there, and what the drivers are. So I kind of shared with you that those 8 strategic areas, those help me develop the budget, and then again those 4 boxes of the categories, those are the ones that council really wants to focus the next couple of years on. And so if you have a chance as we get closer into budget, I really would encourage you to kind of pay attention, tune in. We can also provide you a lot of the budget documentation through your advisory board, so you will get engaged during this process to really pay attention to some of this, because what I mentioned at the beginning is part of our assessment is really helping the boards and commissions align better with the council's strategic goals and priorities, so that you're actually providing input on the areas that they really want to focus on. And so getting that alignment right is super important. I think we've got some work to do in doing that, but as we bring in new people to the boards, you can help be ambassadors in talking to your peers about how to better align your work with the council's goals, and even give advice on maybe what those goals could be in the future. All right, so this is kind of a little bit of a messy, kind of busy slide, but I wanted to share with you that we've been working on some fiscal sustainability planning for a while now. So when I got here in August of 21, I do have a finance background, so I think council's got some work to do with their finances. And we've been working on sustainability planning since October of 22. And what we've been doing is kind of really looking at our finances, trying to identify where we need to kind of shore up our resources, because basically I'm going to show you a chart that shows that our expenses are outpacing revenues, and I want to talk to you about what we've done to try to correct that, and then the work that we still have to do. And I just want to share this kind of timeline with you to let you know that we've been working on this. This is a work in progress, and it's going to continue and for the next several years. And back in April, we had a fiscal sustainability workshop where the council identified, they went through 44 different types of categories of expenditure controls and revenue options, and gave some direction on developing what is a fiscal sustainability action plan. Did that in the summer, in August. And that really gave me my marching orders of, okay, how am I going to right size this ship? So we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. And in that process, we talked about things like, how many types of events do we need to do? Do we need to kind of start partnering with other agencies so that we're not bearing all of that? Because you think events, those things are pretty expensive, to the tune of like $180,000 expensive. So we really need to take a step back and understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and is there someone that can do it better, and rather than maybe us, but we can still get that same kind of event that we like, but maybe through partnership. So it's just kind of one example. Other examples could be fee studies, trying to use technology instead of people for delivering services, all kinds of things like that. So that leads us to now we're in our budget development process. And I just wanted to also kind of back up a little bit. For this year's budget, we went ahead and we had to make a lot of significant adjustments. So if you look at the table up here, I just want to kind of preface before I get into a financial forecast graphic for you, that we closed a $10 million gap. So $10 million in our general fund, which is kind of like, think of it as your like personal checkbook. The city has a personal checkbook. The general fund pays for things like police, fire, courts, planning, economic development, engagement. This meeting right here, neighborhood services, all of that comes out of that big bucket. And so we had to really start and look at how can we whittle that back. The largest amount that I think we've had to date on a general fund has been $100 million. So imagine taking $10 million out of that. Not an easy feat when you want to preserve safety, right? You want to preserve engagement. You want to preserve some of your equity initiatives, things like that. So I got to hand it to the staff of doing that, and we made a lot of changes and a lot of reductions and a lot of lost positions. And I will tell you, both vacant positions eliminated, and we had layoffs. I don't know if you're aware of that. Significant hit to services and to staff, and so we're still working through that. But at the same time, we invested $465 million into this community, and we want to keep doing that. And so this is where I think your help is important. This is our 5-year forecast. I want to preface it that this is uncorrected. There's no corrections in this, right? So this is what happens if we don't do anything. And so you can see right here, we closed the $10 million gap in 23-24. And then you can see I've got a projected shortfall of $5 million this year that I'm working to close now. And so basically, if I orient you, take a look at the total revenues is that green line, and it's kind of staying a little bit flat in the out years. And if you look at the blue line, your expenditures are outpacing your revenues, and that gap continues to grow if we don't do anything to correct it. Down here, we've got, I think, a purple line and a gold line. That gold line is what our target reserves should be, or fund balance. Think of it as like your savings account that you have. That needs to be at least 11% of total expenditures in the general fund. And if we continue on the path we are, we're going to be drawing down on revenue, or excuse me, reserves. And that's not where we want to be, and we'll be in the negative. And why wouldn't we want to do that? Reserves are not for everyday operating things, right? They're for rainy day things, emergencies, maybe one-time investments, stopgap measures if you have some kind of economic issue, but they're not to pay for ongoing operations. And that is just not a good budgeting practice. So we want to avoid that altogether. And so we're working right now to correct that. And what I want to leave you with is on the corrections, they need to be structural in nature. And so when I say structural, that means they can't be one time or help me get through a next couple of years. They have to be permanent, ongoing changes. Otherwise, that number continues to carry forward. And I will tell you, to correct this year's budget problem, I'm going to probably have to use some of those reserves, albeit I won't use all of them because you only have so much. And so we don't want to be in a position where we don't have reserves to be able to pivot really quickly, right? We want to have that kind of stockpiled for the what-if scenarios. So we're going to be asking the community at some point in the future, I can't tell you what kind of revenue strategy that will be, to help us out. And keep in mind, we've got a lot of different things that are coming down the pike for you to consider as voters. We have THPRD, our park district, is going to be coming out in May, right? We have fire coming out in May again, and if they don't succeed, they'll probably be on the ballot in November. We also have a library levy that's coming up in, I believe, November of 25. That's the countywide levy that pays for all of the libraries. 60% of library fund is paid by that levy. 40%, guess where that comes from? The general fund. We don't have enough to sustain that 40%. So we've got some work to do. So this is the important thing, and we want to figure out if we have to come and make an ask to the community at some point, we want to make sure that we're not over asking, and we're also not damaging some of the needs of the special districts that are our partners. And I know that the community is pretty tapped, and this is a really hard conversation. And so I want to prepare you as people that are volunteering and are serving as ambassadors of Beaverton to be aware that we're going to have more conversations and to pay attention to the budget that's coming up over the next several months. We'll have a lot of different touches, and so I really can't, I want to strongly encourage you to watch and watch often and ask questions. Okay, this is really busy too, but it's, I want to make sure that you understand, like when you do a forecast, we just don't make it up. There's a science to it, but there's also an art to it. And so there's a lot of different aspects of forecast assumptions. So just a few I want to put in front of you is, we go ahead and we look at property tax trends. And so we make estimates based on the data that's saying it's growing at a 3% rate. We know how much salaries roughly are going to increase each year. Sometimes there are labor negotiations with labor bargaining groups that we can't predict that, but we try to put in kind of a benchmark and a guess. Only because we have to bargain in good faith and we can't just prescribe what that is, and we have to go through a process. We also know that inflation has been a huge factor. It's been a supply chain issue for our public works, for equipment, materials. Our police officers were impacted as well, and so we really got hit hard with much of the inflation on our expenses. So we've made some adjustments for that as well. But the one thing I want to draw your attention to is property tax, although it's doing okay, right? It's not growing super fast. It takes about 18 months for that to hit the rolls. So when you see something new being built, you're like, oh, the city should be flush in money. No, actually, it takes a while for it to hit. And depending on the type of building, whether it's industrial, it's residential, it's multifamily, those have different rules of what we get. And if it's down here in downtown Beaverton, all the growth on the property tax in central Beaverton goes to the urban renewal district, not to my general fund. It's frozen. So when people see activity going on in terms of development in downtown, please know that that growth is not going into the general fund checkbook. It's going into BURA, which is the Urban Renewal Agency, so that we can develop and create kind of all that synergy that you're seeing happening in the downtown. So again, a lot of people will assume that we're experiencing that revenue in the general fund to pay for everyday services, and we're actually not. So, but the last thing I wanted to say was this bottom row is something I want you to pay attention to. We don't have a lot of revenue sources per se, but revenue also goes down. And we're also seeing a decline in our cable TV revenue that we get. We get cigarette tax, that's going down. People are healthier, they're not smoking as much. And there's also a decline in franchise fees, so Verizon, Frontier, for whatever reason. And so those are starting to trend down, and that impacts our budget. If you think of a pie for the general fund in terms of revenue, 40% of that comes from property tax. All of the other pieces are tiny little slivers like an eighth, a 16th, maybe a third, and many of them are uncontrollable for us, with the exception of probably fees for service, which we have control over, and we are actually adjusting those as well. So that makes it really tricky to deliver services within that budget, right? Because it's constrained. So that's where we have to kind of get creative about how we provide services for the community. So I mentioned a lot of drivers for the budget shortfall. Revenue's a little bit of an issue, decline in some of those key areas I shared with you. Cost of living has been huge for us. The other piece is healthcare retirement. We provide healthcare to our employees. Kaiser's going up 10% and Moda is going up probably close to 20. And so those are hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're in the business of providing services, and it takes people in our business to provide the service, which means that a majority of our expense is personnel. There's no way around it. So I'm trying to look at every single position that I have. Do I need it? Do I not need it? When it becomes vacant, do I freeze it? Do I eliminate it? We are going through that every year, and it's really, really hard. And then when we start having to touch people, it gets even harder. And we might be in that place again this year. And the other piece is that we have a lot of operating expenses that are just going through the roof because we've had deferred maintenance. And so what do I mean by deferred maintenance? Are we putting the amount of money that we need to put into our roads, albeit that those are different transportation related sources, but those things are coming back twofold when you don't invest into the what's called a pavement condition index, where you want it to be at least kind of in the 70s or above. Guess what? It starts to go down and it costs you twice as much to repair. And that's millions of dollars. So things like that we need to start paying attention to. The facilities like this. You want to know how much a roof costs? About $1 million to fix on something like this. So these are the things that we have to start putting away in funds and being able to plan for. And we have assets throughout the entire city that support you. So these are the things that we're facing and we're planning for. Looking ahead, there's a couple of things I want to point out on this. So this is, I've been sharing the budget message with our employees recently, and I've gone through kind of these guiding principles that the council helped establish as we started kind of dealing with our fiscal sustainability planning. And there's a couple that I want to emphasize to you that I think will relate to you. One is that our focus is going to be core services. So what do I mean by core? Life safety, making sure that the water turns on, the toilet flushes, your gas is, turns on when you need it, your trash is taken out, the potholes are filled, your kids can walk to school and feel safe. Those are kind of the core, the library, is open and available. Those are the things that we're focusing on, and that we are trying to minimize the impact on you as much as we can. So those are principles that when I'm going into a budget development process and I'm going to make a recommendation to council, those are the things that are at the forefront. The other is that we want to identify reductions, right, that are sustainable. I don't want to come out and ask the community for money and then turn around 2 years later and go, just kidding, right? We want to be able to make sure that we're making changes that are sustainable, that are not just one time, and that we've made that full pivot and it makes sense. Otherwise, you really lose trust. And so those are things that, and I'm only highlighting those three because I think that those are the things that are really important for residents to hear. And I really want to encourage you to continue your involvement. The fact that you're here today says a lot about you all individually, and so you have no idea how much we appreciate you as volunteers. We can't do half of what we do without your input. So I appreciate it. I know I threw a lot of information at you, and I'm more than happy to come back and talk to boards and commissions, but I do hope some of this was helpful and kind of is a little bit of a primer of what's to come over the next 4 to 6 months. So appreciate your time. It was great seeing your faces, and hope to see you soon. So thanks so much.
That was a lot of information, but it was great foundation to help set you up for success so you understand a little bit more about how the city operates. So next, we're going to go on to another really important topic. We have Grace Wong, our Assistant City Attorney, who's been here for 10 years, and you're our phone a friend on all things boards and commissions. So we really appreciate you being here tonight to really take some complex topics and make it easy for us to understand.
No problem, Lanny. Thank you for having me. Let me see if I can work this before I start talking to you. Hi, everyone. My name is Grace Wong, and I'm one of the Assistant City Attorneys here in Beaverton. Part of my practice is advising Lanny and the neighborhood team on issues relating to running boards and commissions in Beaverton, and also advising on general municipal law. So there are 6 main subjects I want to discuss with you, and that is ordinances and bylaws, ethics, restrictions on political campaigning, public meetings, which there's been an update to state law since the last legislative session, public records, and meeting minutes. The bulk of my presentation will be on ethics, restrictions on political campaigning, and public meetings. So I'm going to gloss over some of the other subjects just so I can focus my time with you in the areas that you need them the most for your board membership this term. So the first one is ordinances and bylaws. So if you're interested, the Beaverton City Code has boards and commissions in Chapter 2.03. And so if you're wanting to look at where your boards are and what the duties are assigned to you, that's where you can find it. If you want more practical advice on how to run your board or commission, I would advise you all to look at your bylaws, and that will have information like what a quorum is, when and where meetings are held, procedures to appoint officers. And just as a word of warning, decisions that don't comply with the official bylaws of your board can be challenged in court, so we try not to do that. So if you have any questions on how your meetings are structured or on how officers are appointed or nominated, definitely ask Laney, but also you can look at your bylaws. Oregon government ethics. Now, I'm going to focus a lot of my time on this because it's very important for board members to know what's at stake when you're a board member of Beaverton. Are you a public official? Yes. The definition in Chapter 244 includes appointed board members. So you and your family members and businesses with which you're associated are all covered under these rules. So definitely pay close attention on how all of those things intersect with one another. The 3 basic rules I'm going to cover with you are as such: prohibited use of office, conflicts of interest, and gifts. There are other rules in ethics that are applicable, but they're not broadly applicable to most people, like nepotism and so on and so forth. So these are the 3 I'm going to be focusing with you. And the first one is prohibited use of office. That means you cannot make personal use of government resources, and you can't make use of confidential information that you earn as a board member. So you can't get or try to get money or avoid paying money through your use of your appointed position. What that means is if you learn any confidential information during your board duties, you can then later make use of that information for personal gain. And this also applies to your businesses. So if you're an owner or if you're an employee of a business, you need to make sure that your board position here doesn't allow you to get that, personal gain. The second rule I want to cover with you is conflicts of interest. The rule is you cannot, if you could or would benefit from an official action, decision, or recommendation, you need to declare it. And if it's a potential conflict of interest, you have to disclose it, and then you can deliberate and vote. But the important part for a potential conflict of interest is that disclosure before deliberation. If you have an actual conflict of interest, meaning you actually will benefit personally and economically from this, you have to not participate in that matter at all. You have to disclose it, and then you either leave the room or you just don't speak at all, and you're done. So those are the two things on conflicts of interest. And the last one is gifts. Now, you as a board member, if something is on the agenda, or if for gifts, there's a $50 a year aggregate limit if the person has a legislative or administrative interest in your position as a board member. If that person does not have an interest in you because of where you are sitting at the board, then there is no gift limitation. But say this person is really interested in what you're doing at the city because of your board member position, then that source, you have to not take any gifts more than $50 in any year. So that's from January 1 to December 31st. All right, so I'm going through some examples here just to make sure you can see it come to life. Prohibited use of office. Let's say you're a board member of a social services funding committee and you're an employee of a local nonprofit. After reviewing completed applications to determine which nonprofits to award, she selects her employer amongst the stack of applications and votes to fund her employer at the next meeting. Now, this is a prohibited use of office because she, as an employee of that nonprofit, that is a business with which she is associated. And so she cannot vote to then fund her employer, that nonprofit organization. That is a prohibited use of office. And so she would be violating Oregon government ethics laws by doing so. The next example I have is a conflict of interest example. Say a city's planning commission held a public meeting to consider approving a land use application for company X. Commissioner A is a co-owner of a business who is going to place a bid to do work for company X related to that application. That commissioner then participated in that discussion and voted to approve the application. Now, this is where the disclosure is very important. You need to disclose because Commissioner A is a co-owner of a business who's then going to place a bid to do work for that company X that's related to that application. That is a clear conflict of interest, and that they have to declare it at the start of the matter. Now, it's very important to declare it at the start of the matter before any discussion comes up. So, best practices here. If you see something on the agenda that you're like, okay, I think I have a potential conflict of interest here, you should inform your board chair or staff liaison in advance as soon as possible so that they can structure the agenda to the very last thing. So you can either leave early or just be done before the meeting ends. And then again, like I mentioned, declare the conflict of interest at the beginning of the matter. And if it's an actual conflict of interest, meaning if you do discuss it, it is going to be to your financial benefit, then you have to leave the room, best practices, so that you don't have to have any sort of discussion with anyone later that there was this actual conflict of interest and you were showing all sorts of faces and you're essentially participating even if you didn't say anything. So if you're on a video call, turn off your thing and don't participate. Now, another important point, if the matter is continued to another meeting because you didn't get it all the way through because there's not enough time, you have to declare it again at that subsequent meeting, at the beginning of the subject discussion again. It is not enough to just declare it the one time. And I've had multiple discussions with board members about this. If it's continued to another board meeting, you have to declare it again because the Oregon Government Ethics Commission is the state body that investigates any complaints of violations of Oregon government ethics rules. And a lot of times what would get board members is the failure to declare it at subsequent meetings. So they think, oh, I got it. I don't have to do this again. No, you have to do it again at the next meeting. And then the declarations must be noted in the written minutes, just so that you're covered, so that if an investigator were to come from the Oregon Government Ethics Commission, that investigator can see your written minutes and go, ah, this person did make the declaration as required under state law. I don't have to pursue this further, and I can close it out. Because people can make all sorts of allegations, investigators will have to go look. And then if you have those declarations in your written minutes, then it's going to be an easy open and shut case for the investigator. Okay, so just ethics generally. Things to ask yourself. Could my business, my family members, or any of their businesses work with the city? And in what capacity? Because those are the things that should start raising any flags in advance so that you're prepared if the meeting were to have an agenda item that could impact either you, your business, or your family's businesses. What are some possibilities that my position here could financially impact me or them or the businesses that we're talking about? And how likely is that going to happen? Because by adequately preparing yourself, by asking these questions in advance, will definitely help inform you and maybe raise those flags at the time when those meeting agenda items are being placed on the agenda. All right, so the last rule is gifts. And the example I have for you is a city council is about to vote to increase the maximum height of downtown buildings in its development code in 2 months. Last month, a developer invited Councilor C to watch a Portland Trail Blazers game the next day. Then the developer tells Councilor C that he wouldn't have to pay for these tickets because these are courtside season tickets. The councilor accepts, then excitedly watches the Blazers beat the Mavericks in the Moda Center with his wife. Now, my boss, the city attorney, likes to say, for this gift limitation, $50 and under is generally free entertainment. Courtside seats are likely worth more than $50. So if you're going to accept this, you're going to get into hot water with the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. So this is a rule change, and the developer is clearly interested in Councilor C because of who he is with the city of Beaverton. He likely wouldn't have offered those seats to him if he wasn't a councilor at the city of Beaverton. So things to know: if you're given awesome entertainment, likely going to violate the $50 a year rule. So things to think about. All right, like this, things to ask yourself. Who is this person who wants to buy me dinner and drinks, give me Blazer tickets, apply discounts for me? Do I do anything on this board or commission that could financially benefit that person? And how much are these items and discounts? Because if you really wanted to milk it, you could get 10 $5 lattes from someone over the course of January 1 to December 31st. Anything more, you can go, well, I already expended all of that $50 discount. I shouldn't take that 11th latte from you. And again, probably keep good records, because again, if that investigator from the Oregon Government Ethics Commission were to come by, you can go, well, I have receipts from all the or the times and dates where this person offered me the food or the drinks, and I can assure you they are under the $50 limit. And again, that's if you really wanted to push it and say, like, yeah, I want my $50 year discount or gift from this source with this legislative or administrative interest. Okay, now I want to highlight that I went through these 3 rules at a fairly quick clip here, and I can't go over every single scenario that you might encounter as a board member. I would highly recommend you go to that Oregon Government Ethics Commission website. They have a wealth of resources. They even have like a naughty list of people who have violated the Oregon Government Ethics rules, and they publish all of those opinions on their website. So again, another reason why not to violate the rules is that you're going to be put on that naughty list with all of your names and how you're related to the public body. They also have a very handy guide for public officials. It's like 60+ pages with lots of examples. I go there frequently just because if I need a refresher, I get some really helpful examples that I can then share with people who ask me ethics questions. So I also highly recommend that you do that as well. You just type in Guide for Public Officials, OGEC, that'll take you right there. And I believe they updated it in the last 2 to 3 years, so they're very current examples. And there's a phone number you can call. You can't say that very often with many agencies, but there's a real person that can actually answer your question. So it's an investigator and a trainer who like mans these calls. I have personally called them, and I've gotten like a 1-hour callback time, which is impressive. And they guided me through the answer that they think the OGEC would have looked at the issue. And so you also can email them. So there's lots of ways to contact them in advance of any issue that you might encounter. Because the one thing I will leave you with is that although I'm a lawyer for the city of Beaverton, I'm not any one person's lawyer. So I cannot advise board or commission members on their personal ethics issues. I can advise generally and give these sets of presentations, but I cannot advise any particular person on what that situation is. I can also advise in generalities and always before any incident occurs, because once something occurs and the OGEC starts investigating, I cannot help them at that point. So highly recommend just seeking out answers from the Ethics Commission in advance if you have them. All right, I'm going to move on to my next subject, which is the restrictions on political campaigning, which is highly important in this phase of the year. How many of you work in public government in Oregon? The public sector? No. Okay. So this is a sign that you typically see posted in all work sites of public agencies, and that tells you that attention all public employees, are restricted from political campaigning during work hours. And I'm here today to tell you that it also applies to appointed boards and commissions members because of how the definition covers boards and commissions members. The definition is broad enough to cover appointed boards and commission members. So what does that mean for you? That means you are prohibited from using quote-unquote work time to support or oppose a political campaign or a candidate or a ballot measure at a meeting of the board or commission, working on a duty or project assigned by the board or commission, working on official publications like websites or social media posts, or appearing at an event in an official capacity. So when you're on work time with a board or commission at the city of Beaverton, that means you cannot publicly support or oppose a political campaign, ballot measure, or candidate. So these are frequently asked questions I get on restrictions on political campaigning. And those are, may a board or commission endorse a candidate or ballot measure? No. No board or commission can formally endorse a candidate or ballot measure. May a board or commission member endorse a candidate or ballot measure? The answer is yes, but only in your personal capacity. And by that I mean you're not on work time at the City of Beaverton's board or commission activities. So official capacity, that's a clear no. Use of board or commission title, maybe. And I would say caution. Make sure that you can prove to anyone who asks that you did that on your own personal time and not on official time with the board or commission. May a candidate drop by a board or commission meeting? Yes, but only if equal access is given to all candidates. So if you're going to allow one, you have to allow all in that race. So they have to have equal opportunity at your board or commission meeting. So I have some examples for you. Let's say Greg is running for a seat on city council. Asks his longtime friend Susie, a co-board member, if he could get her endorsement for the seat. Susie agrees, and she's bored during a board meeting one day and crafts a statement for Greg during that meeting and sends it off to Greg via email. That's a clear no-no because, again, She's at work time, she's at a board meeting clearly. She cannot then craft a statement supporting Greg for his campaign. That is a clear no-no in restrictions for political campaigning. So don't do that. The next example, Greg is running for a seat on city council. Like before, asked his longtime friend Susie if he could get an endorsement. She agrees. She writes one after a meeting on her personal phone, signs it Susie B, sends it off to Greg via email. He uses her endorsement, includes her title as the city's board chair next to his name on his campaign webpage. She did it all on her personal time, which is okay. He includes her title as board chair. Also okay. Presumably he's asked Susie that she can do that, that he's going to do that. But if then Susie then gets questions of like, hey, when did you write that endorsement? Susie should be prepared to say like, I did that on my own personal device outside of a board meeting and clearly in the parking lot and not on city property. So very clear boundaries between what you do for the city of Beaverton at a board or commission, or any duties assigned for the board or commission, or any events in which you are in your official capacity as board member. Delineation between that and any political campaigning that you might do for anyone or any board ballot measure and so on and so forth. All right, so I went through that fairly quickly, but there's the Secretary of State Elections Division pamphlet. There's many more examples that they give in that. There's a link here, and there's a section on appointed members in that link. If you want more information, definitely go to that link if you're interested on the further nuances about these rules. All right, my next subject is public meetings. Now, there was an update, like I mentioned, in the last legislative session, so I'm going to go through all of that with you, including the primer of what is a public meeting. The definition in state law says it's the convening of a governing body of a public body for which quorum, which is majority of board members, is required in order to make a decision or to deliberate on a decision on any matter. So with this definition, boards and commissions meetings are covered under Oregon Public Meetings Law. And the two main rules to remember about Oregon Public Meetings Law is that the first is that all meetings of which a public meeting applies must be public and open to the public to attend. It's a public attendance rule. And the corollary to that is no quorum of a board or commission can meet in private. So you got to remember, you have all meetings have to be publicly noticed in advance so that the public can attend and see what you're going to be talking about. So principal subjects must be included in the agenda, and you cannot, majority of you, meet in private discussing or deliberating or voting on any matter within that board's jurisdiction. What does convening mean? And this is the update that I made because of the legislature's change in state law. They wanted to make it clearer what convening means. And that is gathering in a physical location. What we're doing this evening, we are gathering in a physical location. And if you have a majority of members together and you're having a meeting, you're convening together. Using electronic, video, or telephonic means to communicate contemporaneously among participants. And what this means is the Zoom calls. You know, we had Zoom meetings for so long during the pandemic. Now, convening also includes this definition of convening over Zoom, or just, you know, a telephone conference call. It doesn't have to be Zoom or Teams or whatnot. You're all together on a phone call and you're all talking about subjects within your board's jurisdiction. You're convening. Using serial electronic written communications among participants. That's the third definition of convening. And that is, if I send an email and I'm a board member and I send it to a majority of board members and we all talk about something within the board's jurisdiction, that is creating that serial communications that is not allowed. using an intermediary to communicate amongst participants. Now, if you have, let's say, the staff liaison, basically channeling information from one board member to a majority of board members unchanged, that person is now just a connector between the whole board, that becomes another definition for convening. So lots of ways to communicate, which leads to lots of challenges. So exceptions to convening, communications that are purely factual or educational in nature. If we just send out a report, you could say to be discussed at the next meeting, then you're scheduling it as an agenda item. Communications not related to any matter that could reasonably be foreseen to come before the governing body. Go Seahawks. Didn't they have a great season? Those are all items that are not related to your board or commission work at the city. Last one, communications that are non-substantive, like scheduling, leaves of absence, and other similar matters. So if you're just telling your other board members, hey, I'm not able to come to the next meeting because I have to take my daughter or son to a doctor's appointment, that's not convening. So I say all of this because there are requirements to public meetings law. And the biggest piece to that is that all public meetings must be publicly noticed, so that the public has the opportunity to attend if they want to. It's not a public participation rule, it is a public attendance rule. They want to make sure that, you know, the public knows that we are being transparent. The meetings must be accessible to the public, located within city limits, non-discriminatory, ADA accessible, and have enough space for expected members to attend. The meeting minutes must be created and archived so that even if they didn't attend that meeting, they have a minutes, you know, a written record of what occurred in that meeting. And lastly, if you have meetings in person, you must also provide for alternate means for the public to attend, like telephone, video, or other similar type means. And that is a change that in state law that was made because people got so used to and accustomed to participating aside from being in person. And so because they loved it so much, the state law got changed to require people to have alternate means of attending. All right, and the last piece of it, there's now a training requirement that was in House Bill 2805. And that means that board members must view or attend a training on public meetings law by the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. Now, I've been closely watching this because I advise Lanny Parr and her neighborhood team, but there's no training that's been publicly posted by the OGEC yet. So I'm keeping a very close watch on when that occurs, and I will help Lanny disseminate that training when that occurs. All right, my next section is on public records law. And the main thing I want to say is that the city and its boards and commissions are subject to public records law. And the definition of public record is broad enough that it covers all notes taken by boards and commissions members. And so that means you should retain these notes. Any notes you take at a board or commission meeting should be retained. That means materials prepared for meetings, notes taken before, during, or after a meeting, emails, and social media posts made on behalf of a board or commission. So we highlight that just to let you know that if you take notes, just make sure that they're all in one location, they're easily accessible, so that if someone were to ask, hey, I want to see your notes or your records, you have them in one place and you can turn them over to Lanny or Francisca very easily.
And I just wanted to note that if you were wondering what this fancy notebook is that you all should have received at your tables, this is for the express purpose of keeping your notes all in one handy place. So it's not just a gift from the city, it has a practical purpose. And there's a memo inside from Grace about the records retention on your public meeting notes as well. So anyway, just wanted to point that out at this salient moment.
Thank you, Francisca. All right, my last subject is meeting minutes. Now, they don't have to be extensive, like what everyone said and every word that they said and in which order they said it, but it has to include these pieces at a minimum, which is short to the point minutes. You should use the template that I think Lainey will hand out, which has the date, time, location, who attended, decisions made for each agenda item, like the motions that made it, the motions that died, the actions taken by consensus, and the tasks given to staff. And any new business that was not on the agenda, and the next meeting date and time. So if you have any questions about meeting minutes, I would highly recommend you talk to Lanny and Francisca.
And we also have a video online as well.
Great.
A how to.
Video online. So yeah. Oh, and be sure, do not use any inflammatory language. Just stick to the facts, because again, it's a public record. I'll have to deal with it if it's an issue. So yeah, that was me, and that was my presentation. If you have any questions, I'll take them now. If we have time. Okay, great, we have time. All right, Roz?
Okay, so I'm going to go backwards. So let's, so what you're saying is convening.
Yes.
So this really did happen. So I was invited to be a member of the board for the Southwest NAC. And we had a breakfast meeting. So I met with the chair and another person from another board, and a member of the city council, and the recorder for this particular NAC. And it was more like they were interviewing me to see whether or not they wanted me on the board. They already had my background information. I was already recommended to be on the board, but we met for breakfast. And so a couple of different things came up, like, well, are we talking about Cooper Mountain? Are we talking about traffic? Are we talking about the impact it's going to have? And they wanted my input just to see, do I know what's going on where I live? Is that convening? I mean, that's not a, I mean,
Yeah, so
what is that?
if you're on the board, convening of a majority of board members
That was,
on a NAC, or?
I mean,
It was a NAC, it was on a forum.
Okay.
so we were okay. I mean,
Yeah, there's no forum.
thank you.
Yeah.
Seriously, so you're just making little things, but if you're meeting like that,
Yeah, just make sure that when you count heads of like who's on the board, you don't get to a majority of the board. Say you're a 5-member board, 3 is the bad number. If you're under that, if you're at 2, you're okay. If you're at 7, there's 4. There's some wiggle room, you know, when you have larger boards.
I'm on the Bicycle Advisory Committee, and I got the impression that we might go on a bike ride at some point. Is that considered a convening?
I've advised on site visits in whatever form or variety, whether they're walks, they're bike rides, etc. And what our office advises is that you start the meeting in a location at the city. You go on your bike ride. You don't talk during that bike ride. You're just like bicycling, and then you come back and then you talk about it, debrief.
Okay.
So this question is in regards to conflicts of interest, and you said like if you consider a family member could potentially benefit. For what's the definition or limitation on family members? Like, does my second cousin's daughter count, or my in-laws? Where's the line for that?
Good question. I get that a lot from employees. So I go into that a lot more detail at the new employee orientation for city employees, but it is likely every family member who is invited to Thanksgiving, except for cousins. So your son, daughter, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, your spouse's same set of categories. Yeah, so it's a huge long list of relatives. So if you look at relatives in chapter 244, you'll find a big long list. Cousins are excluded though. So, yeah, father, mother, son, daughter, son-in-law, daughter-in-law. Any person with whom you have a legal support obligation, or, you know, someone who gets benefits arising from your employment, or, you know, so there's more categories for employees. Sorry, I was trying to go from memory of relatives, and I get into this giant list of people. Also, any businesses with which they're associated. So, yeah. All right.
Thanks, Grace. So you're probably going to think of some other questions in the coming months, and your staff liaison is going to be your a great resource to talk to. And if they don't know the answer, they'll reach out to Francisca and I. And so just know that go ahead and you know, ask those questions to your staff liaison, and we're here to help support you as you you know, embark in this great adventure. So now we're going to do all things Beaverton 101. Francisca Elliott, the person that will be sending you many emails, is going to share many facts that you didn't know about Beaverton and much more. And so I'm just going to let you take it away.
And in the process, you have the opportunity to win some really fun Beaverton swag. So I know that you've been talked at the majority of tonight, so I'm going to make it a little interactive and have there be a little trivia. So before I get into my spiel, I'll demonstrate Vanna White style what you could possibly win. So we have these reusable tote bags that are actually washable. They're like a washable denim for our neighborhood. So we have 2 different styles. We also have some wonderful picnic blankets. I know it's not picnic weather quite yet, but in preparation. I wish I could show you the beautiful designs. You'll just have to picture them in your mind, but they're from our arts team. And so one of them is Painted Sky, the Native American dancer. So it's a Native American dancer in an artistic style. And then the other one is a family in a garden from our Visioning storybook. So you have that, and then we have, because we all could use another water bottle, Beaverton water bottle, and then a Beaverton tumbler for whatever beverage you choose to put in it. I won't tell you what. And then last but certainly not least, this is a gift from our caterer tonight. They serve this birria sauce in New Seasons Market. So if you're a foodie and you would like some birria sauce to take home with you, that's your choice as well. So, welcome again to our orientation for new board members. Fun fact, I once was a new board member. I actually served on the Beaverton Committee for Community Involvement from 2010 to 2012. So Lanny and I go back that far. Lanny is the staff liaison to the BCCI, and like the mayor said, I got a postcard in the mail. Maybe some of you got the postcard I sent out. And it just said, do you like to volunteer? Do you want to get involved? And I had no idea what I was signing up for. But I was really interested in serving the Beaverton community. I'm something of a Beaverton cheerleader, back before Beaverton became the cool hotspot that it is today. But I really love Beaverton. I really love our boards and commissions, so I have an extra special soft spot in my heart for all of you and what you do. So I am here to be a resource for you. If you have any questions, like Lanny said, your staff liaison is definitely your first line of defense, but I am always here, and you should all have an email from me, so reach out anytime. Hopefully I won't send you too many emails, but feedback I've heard is that they are helpful, so please read them. So with that, my job tonight is to give you some more context for Beaverton, like Lanny said, share some fun facts that you may not know, and then the resources that our program offers as well. So these words represent the guiding vision for our community and the work that we do at the city. So these are what I would consider to be our core values at the city. So just kind of wanted to frame tonight's conversation around Beaverton 101 with that. And so for our first trivia question of the night, what is the name of the indigenous tribe that originally stewarded this area? Sarah.
I know I'm going to pronounce it wrong.
Yes. I would have also taken the Alphalati tribe as well. So fun facts about that in terms of what the distinction there. So the Atfalati were the northernmost band of the Kalapuyans. So before I get into the rest of my information on this slide, Sarah, what prize can I offer you? Yes. Would you like the deer or the fish? The fish. Perfect. Excellent. Lanny will go and deliver that to you. So members of the Alphalati Kalapuya tribe lived here in a village called Chipeke, which roughly translates to place of the beaver, hence Beaverton. The Atfalati were like I said, were the northernmost band of the Kalapuyans. And if you want more information about who this tribe was, the Five Oaks Museum located at PCC Rock Creek has a fantastic exhibition called This is Kalapuyan Land. We are now, what we now know as Canyon Road was originally the Great Plank Road, established in 1851, connecting the productive agricultural communities in the Tualatin Valley to Portland. And it is actually the road that made Portland one of the most important cities in the Pacific Northwest. In 1893, the city was officially incorporated with 350 people at that time. Beaverton is a place shaped by the experiences and stories of those who have lived, worked, or passed through the city, but only certain stories have made it into the dominant narrative until now, primarily those of European Americans, pioneers, and settlers. And what this slide is talking about, Our City, Our Stories, is a project that aims to address gaps in the historical record and redefine whose stories are considered history. So if you want more information about that, I just like to frame a little bit about what our history actually is and then the work that we're doing at the city to bring forth more of what that history should be. And so you can go to beavertonoregon.gov/our stories to learn more about that project. So Beaverton today, we are a community of now over 100,000 people. I didn't get to used to say that. I used to say almost 100,000, but we are actually over 100,000 people. That was recently certified at 101,165 folks. Our median age is 36. Our median household income is $68,000 a year. Levels of college education is more than 47%. Renter versus owner occupied is actually about even, at about 51% renter occupied. And we have 12% approximately living in poverty. I'd also like to point out, you may or may not know this, but our boundaries are definitely not cookie cutter. So when you're looking over at the image on the right-hand side of the screen, so everything that you see that's in color, that is the city of Beaverton. And all of those Swiss cheese pockets of white, those are unincorporated pockets of Washington County. So you may have neighbors that think that they live in the city of Beaverton, and they may have a Beaverton address, and they very well may not live in the city of Beaverton. So we do have a handy dandy tool at our city website if you go to beavertonoregon.gov/neighborhood, which will tell you if you live within city limits. But this is especially relevant if you have neighbors who may want to apply to be on a board or commission, and some of our city board and commissions do require residency to serve on them, like our budget committee, our social services funding committee, and our traffic commission. So just like to put that out there, that our boundaries can be a little bit wonky. I wish they were more cohesive, but with that, I just like to let folks know so that in your ambassadorship for the city, that folks can be aware of that. So this slide is the slide that I think really sets Beaverton apart. These are specific to Beaverton in terms of residents that are 1 in 5 are born outside of the US. 1 in 3 self-identify as a person of color, and the richness of this cultural diversity is what I believe makes Beaverton such a vibrant city. And so we're one of the most multicultural cities in the state of Oregon, and that's something that I'm really proud of. And there are a lot of different ways that we celebrate that in the city. I'll put a plug in for our Beaverton Night Market. If you have never been to a Beaverton Night Market event, we host those in the summer, and it's one of the, in my opinion, one of the best things that we do all year. Next trivia question. How many different languages are spoken at home for families in the Beaverton School District? Much higher. Yes. Yes. Sorry, not Ross. Yes. Over 100? Over 100, that is correct. Yes, over 100 different languages are spoken in the Beaverton School District. And what lovely prize can I offer you? Yes, excellent. That number often shocks people, that it actually is over 100 different languages are spoken in the Beaverton School District. Okay, so you already got a bit of information about Mayor Beatty. So she is the city's first female mayor. Before her time as mayor, like I said, she served, like was said before, she served on city council and city boards, and she is a mother, a veteran, and is working hard on policies that will shape our community. And so this is our Beaverton City Council. So if you didn't know, the full City Council includes the mayor and 6 city councilors who are elected at large to serve the city as a whole. So there's no districts. You may come from another city where there were districts where city councilors represented particular districts. At the city here in Beaverton, all of our city councilors are at large and serve the entirety of the city. And so, like our city manager said, city council priorities guide planning and decision making throughout the year. And city council meets on the first and third Tuesday of each month in this room right here to discuss and make decisions on a variety of topics affecting our community. And the last trivia question: which councilor was just elected to serve as the 2024 council president? No. You've got a 1 in 6 chance. Nope. Yes, Tafina. Yes, I don't know if that was just a wild guess, just throwing out councilor names, but you got it. Councilor Kimmy is the 2024 council president. And what lovely prize can I offer you?
I'll take the water.
The water bottle. You got it. Okay. All right, so speaking of city council, so most of your boards have a council liaison, but not all of them do. So you all have a staff liaison, some of you have a council liaison. So council liaisons act as a conduit of information to and from the council body. Advisory boards also make an annual report to council about the work they have accomplished in that last year. So boards that don't have a council liaison are our traffic commission or our planning commission. But the majority of the boards do have a council liaison that will attend some of your meetings to give an update on what's happening at a council level, to hear feedback from the board about what's happening at the council level. And so, so with that, that's a direct line of access that you all have as board and commission members to our city council. So speaking of staff liaisons, so staff liaisons are responsible for all of the things that are here listed on this slide. And I just want to point out that they are here to support you, and they do also have full-time day jobs. So along with that host of regular duties to attend to day-to-day, it's just important to keep in mind as you endeavor to do the work that you do. I know what it's like to be a super enthusiastic and eager board member with lots of ideas and enthusiasms for different projects and things that you might want to take on. But just bearing in mind that staff liaisons do have a whole body of work that they're attending to outside of being a staff liaison for your committee. And so who we are in the Neighborhood and Public Involvement Program, so we wear a lot of different hats at the city. I know Lanny has already given a little bit of context for who we are. So we're part Neighborhood Association Committee, so that's affectionately referred to as NACS. So the city has 11 different neighborhoods, and each of them has their own board, their own association committee. And so part of our program is supporting that, and then the other part of our program is under my domain, which is supporting our boards and commissions from an administrative standpoint, and supporting the staff liaisons that support you. So, you know, I was the one that oversaw the recruitment process that got all of you in the door here. So I have read each and every one of your applications, and I'm so thrilled to actually meet you here in person tonight and put a face to your name. And so, like Lanny said, we also oversee bylaw and ordinance changes. We have an annual boards and commissions celebration that we host every year in January that just happened. It's for the board members that served the previous year. So you all will get a formal invite to next year's celebration. It's a really great opportunity to be with other board members, be with city council, hear about all of the great work that you all accomplish. It's one of my favorite things that we do every year. So it's our way of saying thank you for devoting your time and energy to us. And we also support citywide public involvement. And so that's the other thing that I do here at the city, aside from boards and commissions, is I act as an internal consultant to city staff to support them in that work, along with my colleagues as well. And so, like Lanny said, you will hear from me periodically about those trainings. You've already heard from me about the February 15th training that's coming up that I'll mention again later on. When there is an important project or initiative that's happening, folks want to hear from you. And so you are kind of the first go-to for getting feedback about those kinds of projects and policies and initiatives. And so you'll receive emails from me inviting you to share that feedback, take a survey, participate in a focus group, those kinds of things. So with those resources that our program develops, we do have a variety of resources that we've made available online. So those are just a smattering of some of them. There are printed copies for anybody that likes having a physical copy to look at, but all of them are available online. You will see there that there is a Boards and Commissions member manual. We are in the process of updating last year's, so we will have that updated by the February 15th workshop, and I'll have physical copies there if you would like them. But once that is updated, I will send you an email so that you can access the online PDF as well. So nothing you need to worry about tonight. You're getting the foundational information. The most important information for you to know at this time is really the ethics, public meeting laws, the stuff that Grace talked about. But then our Boards and Commissions member manual is really just that kind of high-level overview of your role as a board and commission member and some helpful information to guide you as you continue on. And so those resources are always available online at beavertonoregon.gov/board member resources. And so a copy of tonight's PowerPoint presentation will go up on that website. Once we get the recording back from TVC TV, that will also be on that website. If you were to visit it at this very moment, you would see the 2023 edition. So anything that says 2023 will soon be updated with 2024. But anyway, it has a whole bunch of resources that you may find valuable. If you are going to be a recorder for your board or commission at any point, we do have a minutes taking guide. Like Lanny had mentioned, we do have that video recording from a previous city recorder who used to host those trainings for our board members. That video from when we were hosting it virtually is online, and the information is all just as relevant. But it gives you those kind of helpful hints and tips for how to make minutes really efficient and effective. I actually was the recorder for BCCI at one point. It sounds really intimidating, but once you've got the knack for it, it's a really great way to be part of the leadership team on your board. And so other helpful things that you'll find on that webpage as well is how to look up your other elected officials. So obviously City Council is who governs the city of Beaverton here, but if you're looking to find out who's your representative, your state representative, your Washington County Commissioner, or who represents you on the Beaverton School District Board, all of these links are available on that board member resources page. But just to know, who are my representatives, because that's definitely an important thing that you'll want to know in your role. And so for these last couple of slides, I just have, these are just some best practices for boards, board members, and some characteristics of really effective board members. So high-performing boards, they have a constructive partnership with staff. They're mission and results-driven. They engage in strategic thinking. They promote a culture of inquiry. They promote transparency and are committed to continuous learning. Effective board members are prepared and attend all board meetings and activities, recognize that the board must operate in an open and public manner. They're aware that the authority to act is granted to the board as a whole and not individual board members, and are proactive in keeping up to date with the direction the city is moving. And then some characteristics of successful board members. Knowledge of your board. Be familiar with your bylaws, core mission, past and future issues. Devote sufficient time to studying the present and future problems of the Beaverton community. Remember that you represent all the people of your community, not just neighbors or friends. Don't spring surprises on your fellow governing board members or city staff, especially at formal meetings. And lastly, celebrate. You know, there's a lot of issues that we're trying to work on here at the city to improve our community, issues that you will be working on as board members. But don't always focus on necessarily the problems and issues. Make sure to share the successes of your board and share what's going well, you know, in your community and with your board, with each other. So, like you all should have gotten already a message about our February 15th all-member board and commission workshop. So this is a brand new workshop that we are kicking off for this year. And this is about those strategic goals and priorities of City Council that the city manager was talking about, and how we align the work of our boards more closely with those goals and priorities of City Council. So this is a really awesome board member workshop where tonight is focused on the new board members, but at the February 15th workshop, it's open and encouraged to attend by all board members. So it's a really great mingling opportunity as well, in addition to getting a really good foundation for giving direction to your board's work plan as you move through the work that your board will be doing. And so you all should have received the RSVP link to that in that email. It's bundled into a survey that the consultant has prepared so that they can be really well informed going into that session. So it won't be myself that will be facilitating that session or Lanny. It will be the consultant team, SSW, that helped to lead the annual council's annual retreat last November, where they came up with their goals and priorities for the coming years. So it'll be those same consultants. So please do take an opportunity as soon as you can to fill out that survey. It's got some really thoughtful questions to reflect on, especially as new board members, and thinking about, you know, what you would want to see out of this, what's really important to you, as well as making sure to let them know whether or not you can attend that session. Even if you can't attend that session, please do still fill out that survey so that they can have that valuable input from board members about the kinds of things that are on their mind and the kinds of things that they would find really valuable from a session like this, or just in general, you know, whether it's about how boards work together with City Council or with staff. So take, you know, 10, 15 minutes and fill out that survey. I know that we would really, really appreciate hearing your thoughts. And so that's on February 15th from 5:30 to 8 p.m. Dinner is 5:30 to 6, so the session itself will start from 6 to 8, but we're saying 5:30 so that folks can have some time to come, eat some dinner, meet some other board members before the work really begins in earnest. We will have childcare at that session because we expect a large group of folks to be attending, so we'll have on-site childcare at the library for that. And dinner, of course, will be served. It'll be at the main library in meeting rooms A and B. And then we have another training workshop, our effective meetings workshop. That's coming up on March 6th, and that is with an industry expert. His name is Lenny Borer. He's really excellent at giving a lot of really useful and valuable context and tips for how to facilitate and participate effectively in meetings to get the most out of it. So it's a really fun workshop. He's been doing it for us for a number of years. Folks always really get a lot out of it. And so we invite you to come back here, Council Chambers, 6 to 8. So that'll be March 6th, and we'll serve you dinner all over again. So if you have any questions on either of those two workshops, just feel free to come up to me after tonight's session. I'd be happy to answer those questions for you. Childcare will only be available, unfortunately, for the all-member workshop, just because we are expecting a really large turnout for that. And we have to have a certain threshold of children to be able to bring in the professional childcare folks. So I want to end with this slide, and then I'll open it up for any questions, and if there aren't any questions, then I'll get you out of here a few minutes early. But this quote always really speaks to me about the work that you all are doing. So volunteering is the ultimate exercise in democracy. You vote in elections once a year, but when you volunteer, you vote every day about the kind of community you want to live in. And so I just want to thank you again for being generous with your time and your energy and your enthusiasm to want to give to the community in this way. We so value you here at the City of Beaverton, and we know that you all are going to do amazing things on your board, and we can't wait to support you all in that effort. So in closing, I'll hand it back over to Lanny if you have any closing remarks. I just wanted to make sure to mention that we do have to-go containers, so the food is all yours. So take some home, take them home to your spouse, take some for lunch tomorrow, whatever you want to do, please take home the food. We'll be sticking around, so if you do have any questions, please do let us know. But thanks again for giving up your Tuesday night to come and learn a lot of information, you know, and some really important rules and regulations that govern the work that you do as board members. But I promise it won't be so talk heavy the next time. This is just kind of the foundation that we got to give you so that you can be successful in your role. But with that, we're done.
And we'll be around if you want to talk with us on individual questions. Thanks.